Da 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 do da 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 do da 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 do da 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 da. To Kill a Mockingbird. Da 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 do da da do da 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 do da 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 da. To Kill a Mockingbird. Let's start analyzing. To Kill a Mockingbird. Let's start analyzing. I'm Vukovic Theolit. Vukovic Theolit.
What's up, Theolets? Welcome back to another video. So before we begin, let's get into our thought-provoking questions for To Kill a Mockingbird Chapter 1. Number 1, why do you think Harper Lee chooses to narrate the story in the way that she does? Think about who the narrator is and what is the narrator's method of narration. Number 2, how does the Finch family seem to fit in with the area that they live in? And number 3, this is a moral and ethical question, so you can have multiple answers to this one. So I'm not going to answer this one in the video. Do you agree with Atticus's stance towards justice? Why or why not? Okay, let's begin talking about To Kill a Mockingbird. I'm so excited. Let's get into this book. This book has a lot going on because it's very, very long. It's one of the longest books that I've currently read in my career in English language arts. God. So we have to actually get into this. So the main characters in this story are Atticus Finch, Jem, Scout, Dill, and Boo Radley, also Calpurnia. So let's just give a brief overview. Atticus Finch is this father who really, really loves his children, although he might not show it. He has a huge stance on justice, and he believes that justice must be carried out when it can be. Jem is this brother. Jem is kind of like an amiable and friendly brother. That's really what he is, and he knows how to have a good conversation with people. He knows how to make friends, like with Dill. He's able to make friends with him. They're able to bond. Meanwhile, Scout can be a little bit more argumentative, a little bit more, questioning. She's a little bit less amiable and more disagreeable. With Dill is just a character that we see in chapter 1, and he's not really in many future chapters. Dill is excited by these ideas of morbid tales, scary things. He likes horror and he's captivated by it. Boo Radley is the fear of the neighborhood. Everyone is scared of Boo Radley. And really, lastly, Calpurnia is that demanding. Is she a maid? I don't really know. She's like this maid and house servant for the Finch family. She's a very demanding person, and she wants things done a certain way. And mostly, her clash comes with Scout, who is the main character in the story. Now, Scout narrates a story with the first-person narration. But the interesting thing about this story is it begins with a flashback. If you go into the very page 3, it will say that everything started when Jem broke his arm. So everything starts with that incident, and then they go back to get why that happened. And they all say it started with Boo Radley. But really, it started with the dare from Dill. And in order to understand that, we need to actually be able to understand everything that's going on. So, who is the Finch family background? They were white Europeans, and they really wish that they were involved in some amazing war, but they were not. They are absolute nobodies, and then they just moved to the United States. They're very insignificant, and they just go to this small town called Maycomb County or something like that. Maycomb. So they go to Maycomb, and this is a very laboring town. So it fits in with this ideology of the Finch family, right? If you look at Simon Finch worked at this farm and he labored for all his time. He was all about sustaining crops and having crops for the future generation to grow in. And this is a similar mindset that Atticus Finch adopts. He's all about, okay, what I have is all I want. I'm going to be humble with what I have. They are not bragging about what they have. They don't brag about the resources. They are considered very modest and humble people. But there is a contrast. There is this farmer in the beforehand and then a lawyer in the afterhand. And although Atticus Finch understands a lot of the practices of a farmer, he's a much different person. And this contrast is mostly because of the historical context during this time. Industrial Revolution meant advances in technology, and also the 20th century forced you to compete with these farmers. Farmers were no longer seen as a big thing. Before it was about providing for your family. Now it's actually about having a purpose in society. And so you see lawyers and doctors pop up a lot more. That's why we see that Atticus decided to learn law while his younger brother decided to study medicine. It's all about the historical context here. But really what this family is about is upholding justice. That's the main thing. Atticus decided to be a lawyer because he wants to uphold justice. That's his whole idea, and he always refers back to justice. Remember, one time, these very rich people, let me just go back to this part, but there's these very rich people, and they kind of got away with something simply because of their wealth. And what happened is that this really pissed off Atticus Finch, right? Because he believes in justice. And then he kind of angry about adopting this criminal justice job, because a lot of time you'll see that criminal justice as a job, although ideologically it is about ensuring justice, sometimes the justice system is corrupt. And that's what you'll see in this story, the corruption of the justice system, not only with Atticus Finch, but also with the teacher in chapter 2. But really, although we get into justice, there is very little about that in chapter 1. Chapter 1 is supposed to be a very relaxing beginning, and that relaxing beginning begins in the summertime. They find this Dill guy. Dill's an ordinary white dude. And they're like, yo, Dill, you want to do some things? They're like, okay. So they meet up with Dill. And then what happens is that Dill's really intrigued by morbid stories, and they say, okay, there's this neighborhood myth called the Radley House. And this supposedly starts everything, as you'll see on page 12. And if you just, not page 12, is it page 12? Is it page 12? Nope, it's not page 12. It's page 16. As you'll see on page 16, this started everything. So what happens is that Dill says, I dare you guys to touch that Radley House. And the Radley House is very haunted, and the reason why is because they believe that ghosts live in there. Because some weird stuff happened. Like Boo Radley, the son of Mr. Radley, who owns the house, he tried to stab his father with some scissors. And also, Boo Radley wasn't seen for 15 years, begging the question, where was he? Was he in the house? Because a lot of people think that he was in the house because his father had taken him away from a gang and put him in that house. But the question is, did they imprison him or did they do something different? Now, Atticus Finch always says, mind your own business. So Atticus Finch is not involved in this situation. And this is the thing about Atticus Finch. He says everyone has a right to do what they want to do, but we have to maintain to standards of justice. He doesn't go around poking around other people's business and saying, you're doing this wrong. No, he specifically corrects his own family. So Atticus Finch somehow adopts this idea of America, how they didn't interfere with Latin America, but they were like, no, we got to center on our domestic affairs. Well, Atticus Finch is the very same thing. But basically, what he's trying to do is he's trying to humble people and not make them say, oh, we're so much better than you because we're doing this one way and you guys are rational, you guys are idiots. What he's trying to do is he's humbling them and making them work harder and not making them seem better to other people. That's Atticus Finch parenting mentality, okay? But anyways, what happens is that Jem, this brother who's very cordial, very kind guy, he's friends with Dill, and then he said to touch the Radley house because Radley house, apparently there's some ghosts living because there was a murder of the scissors, and you know what could happen if Mr. Radley stepped outside, and Mr. Radley seems like a very scary and sketchy person because he seemed like the guy who would bound his son there for 15 years because Boo Radley was not seen for 15 years. So they believe that that was a thing, even though the father's no longer alive, but now the older brother has taken the place, so there's still that risk. They touch that house, nothing happens except for one exact thing. It says that we saw an inside shutter move, flick, a tiny, almost invisible movement, and the house is still. What that means is that somehow there is some change. We don't know what that change is, and everything is about anticipating what will happen next. Something triggered Boo Radley, as it says in page 3. Something triggered Boo Radley, and that, my friends, led somehow to the breaking of Jem's arm. Thank you. Hi guys. So, if you remember, please take a look at this book. This is To Kill a Mockingbird by Harper Lee. If you didn't get the right copy, remember to get the Hyper Perennial Modern Classics. And as always, thanks for reading.